praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. Before I enter into the sermon, I just want to briefly acknowledge that it's been about 25 minutes and we've heard the electric guitar, the drums, the flute, the pipe organ, sung a traditional hymn. I mean, that's a pretty productive morning. So thank you so much to our talented musicians who put so much into creating a worshipful space for all of us. As I know a lot of you have a spectrum of palettes for what music speaks to you, and what a blessing that we have a spectrum of talents to offer invitation into worship. So thank you dearly. So friends, this gospel passage today is a unique one from Luke chapter 13. And the reason it's unique, especially seasonally, is that in this passage there's no mystical experience or moment or event that happens, like say happens at Jesus' baptism, Jesus' wilderness experience in the desert, or the transfiguration of Jesus, where something mystical happens, right? But then on the other hand, in this passage, there's also no explicit lesson of wisdom from Jesus. He's not preaching a sermon like the Sermon on the Mount, and he's not telling us a parable where there's an underlying bit of wisdom. Instead, we just simply, 2,000 years later, get sort of a glimpse at a very profound and dramatic interaction he has with some Pharisees. But this interaction reveals something really intense about Jesus. This interaction reveals his unflappable determination to keep serving his people. So a little context. Remember, a few weeks ago, we had a turning point in the story of Jesus, in the biography of Jesus. A few weeks ago, he went up the Mount of Transfiguration, spoke with Moses and Elijah, and his compass turned towards Jerusalem. And the season of Lent begins. And the season of Lent is about tracking Jesus' journey to Jerusalem, where he'll have his last week before he's crucified and is raised again. And so where we are in today's passage, he's kind of somewhere in the middle of his journey from Galilee down to Jerusalem. So he's on his way, but not yet there, to Jerusalem. And now I want to reimagine these 5 verses from Luke 13 with all of you. But I want to reimagine this passage like it's like a, I don't know, name your favorite director, a Ridley Scott movie scene between Jesus and the Pharisees. I want you to imagine this scene as a blockbuster movie for added drama, because this is an enormously dramatic moment in Jesus' life. So, and action, okay? We are deep in the heart of King Herod's territory, somewhere east of the Jordan River, on some dusty Palestinian road near a rural desert village. And these regal-looking Pharisees rush up to Jesus with a sense of urgency. And they're panting. And with that panted breath, their robes are whipping in the desert wind, and they look right at Jesus and they say, "You need to get out of here. Herod wants to kill you." The air is eerie and it's heavy. Everyone knows that Herod doesn't play games. When he makes a threat, he means it. After all, he just put John the Baptist's head on a platter. "Did you hear me, teacher? Herod wants to kill you." Jesus doesn't blink. He tilts his head, and with a calm and fearless smirk, he drops a cutting line. "Go tell that fox that I will keep healing people here today and tomorrow and the next until I am done. Then I'll be on my way." The Pharisees stare at him with a mix of awe and confusion. And then Jesus nods towards Jerusalem. And he says, Jerusalem is also known to kill prophets like me. And friends, I'll go there too. And I'll do my work. Because my desire is to gather their children like a mother hen gathers her chicks. And then Jesus looks back at the Pharisees and he pauses and he says in a collected voice, so I'll continue my work here, and then I'll see you in Jerusalem. And after a pause, Jesus hauntingly begins to sing Psalm 118. And the Pharisees freeze. They know that song well. And Jesus sings on. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. And as he hums that ancient song, Jesus turns and departs from the Pharisees and stops after a few meters, gives them one last look and a nod before heading toward a group of people down the road who are waiting to be healed, waiting for compassion, and waiting to be served by the Son of Man. Onward toward Jerusalem. And the tune of the psalm echoes in the barren desert. End scene. What an interaction. The Pharisees warn Jesus of threats upon his life that are terrifyingly real. And we don't know their intentions, right? Because Jesus and the Pharisees have been adversaries up to this point. They don't like each other. So we don't know their intentions in giving Jesus this warning here. Is it truly a warning or is it a ploy? One scholar on the book of Luke says, we don't know, and it doesn't matter. What matters is how Jesus responds to threat. In calling Herod a fox, Jesus slams the ruler as a predator. And notice the contrast with the way he describes himself. What animal does Jesus refer to himself as? A mother hen. One, an image of violence. The other, an image of motherly love. And Jesus' hen imagery here is no accident. All over the Old Testament, which would have been Jesus' Bible, from Exodus to the Psalms, God is compared to a motherly bird. A motherly bird who protects her young. And here Jesus adorns himself in the face of threat with this ancient divine image, signaling his identity with the God of old and his determination to love his people. And then finally, Jesus' nod towards Jerusalem is another blockbuster moment. He acknowledges the danger from Herod, from where he is in that moment, but he acknowledges the danger also awaiting him in Jerusalem. And yet he reminds these Pharisees that whether it's Herod or the risks of the holy city, he remains undeterred. And then, folks, for Jesus to chant Psalm 118 at the end of this interaction is so poignant. You see, Psalm 118 isn't just any psalm. Its specific use in ancient Israel, its specific use was for making pilgrimage to Jerusalem for Passover. And Passover being a holiday that celebrates overcoming the oppressive empire. This is why this is like a movie scene to me. Jesus is singing Psalm 118 after naming the dangers of Jerusalem that await him. And him doing that, and I'm really hoping a lot of you know the refrain of this song, him doing that, singing Psalm 118 at the end of this interaction, is like saying, I'm a wanted man in West Virginia, death penalty, and then starting to sing Take Me Home, Country Roads, and heading straight to West Virginia. Jesus knows his purpose and refuses to be intimidated, unafraid of political threats and religious opposition. He appears to operate not with a reckless courage, but with the absolute freedom of a person who knows the truth of who God is and his call to serve. This is what trusting and living into the gospel can do for people. And Jesus' unwavering courage in this moment isn't just a relic of the past. It's the same courage that has shaped his followers for generations. When disciples truly live into the gospel, they too become indomitable. One striking example of this is Archbishop Oscar Romero of El Salvador. In the 1970s, steeped in his Christian faith, Romero became a champion of the poor, speaking out against a violent government. And because of this, he constantly received death threats. In fact, tragically, he would ultimately be assassinated while administering Holy Communion. But like Jesus, these threats were terrifyingly real. As Herod had killed John the Baptist, up to this point in Romero's life, Romero's fellow clergy were being murdered by government-sanctioned death squads. And so, death threat after death threat, a newspaper finally interviewed Romero and asked him how he felt about these very legitimate threats. And here's how he responded. Romero said, "If they kill me, I will rise again in the people of El Salvador. I wish they could realize they're wasting their time." The gospel infused Romero with utter freedom and unflappable determination to keep serving people. And friends, we can stand in both awe and comfort at Jesus' unshakable determination to love and serve us. And that same gospel-infused courage that shaped Romero can shape each of you too. Standing on the solid rock of Christ, we can take comfort in Jesus' fierce and unwavering love. And standing on that love like Romero, we can grow too into persistent, courageous disciples. No matter what threats we face as individuals, and no matter what challenges confront us as the church, we too can stare into those threats, call them a fox, undeterred, and continue on our way in service of the neighbor. Amen. We sing together.